She loved him with all her youth, with the most beautiful, trusting, and foolish years of her life. But then, one unannounced afternoon, he left. No tears. No explanation. Just a short message, like a death sentence for a heart that beat only for him. Everything inside her collapsed. The dreams they once shared turned to dust, and she herself no longer knew who she was, except for the pain. She once thought that love would last forever. They met in their final year of college, two young souls full of dreams, believing that as long as they loved each other enough, they could get through anything. Late nights studying side by side, holding hands under the rain in Delat, promises of a little house and children someday, everything was so beautiful that she never once doubted it would last. But the end came. And it came in the cruelest way. Just one text message. "I'm sorry. We shouldn't continue." No further explanation. He vanished, blocked all contact, left the city, and left her life like he was never a part of it. She collapsed. The days that followed were a blur of hollow existence. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, couldn't even cry, her tears had dried up. She just sat in silence, staring at the empty screen of her phone for hours, waiting for a message she knew would never come. Friends were worried. Family tried to comfort her. But every word sounded like distant echoes in an empty room. She no longer recognized herself. A woman who was once strong and full of ambition had been torn apart by one person so deeply, she didn't even know who she was anymore. Love, the thing she once believed would save her, had become a cold, sharp blade. She began to doubt everything. It felt like the whole world had turned its back on her. How could someone walk away so easily, after everything they had built together? That question haunted her, tortured her, weighed on her every night. She hadn't just lost a person. She lost her trust in herself, in love, in all the beautiful things in life. And just when it seemed like everything inside her had died, a quiet journey of rebirth began. After weeks of drowning in seemingly endless pain, she looked at herself in the mirror, gaunt, hollow-eyed, with a heart that no longer had the strength to beat. That wasn't her. Not the woman who once dreamed big, loved deeply, and believed in all things beautiful. She realized, if she kept living like this, she would lose herself forever. One early autumn morning, without telling anyone, she packed a few essentials, turned off her phone, and left the city. No clear destination. She only knew one thing: she had to go. Far. Far from the memories, far from every corner that still carried traces of him. She traveled to a quiet highland region and volunteered at a small village school. By day, she taught children to read and write. By night, she sat around fires with the locals, talking under the dim glow of oil lamps. In a place without cell signals or social media, she slowly began to hear her own breath again. There were still nights when she cried. But it wasn't the kind of crying that left her crumpled in despair anymore. These were cleansing tears, like rain washing the dust away after a storm. In those dirt-smudged smiles of the children, she saw something she had forgotten. Life was still happening, quietly, fiercely. She began journaling again, sketching small moments, the light in a child's eyes, a makeshift bamboo bridge, the bare feet racing across red soil. She started reading again. Taught herself to cook. Learned how to sit in silence without feeling empty. The wounds in her heart didn't vanish, but they stopped bleeding. No one saved her from the pain. She walked through it, one step at a time. And on that path, for the first time in a long while, she smiled, not for anyone else, but for herself. One October morning, as the mist still clung softly to the thatched rooftops, she sat on the steps of the classroom, watching the sun slowly rise over the mountain ridge. Beside her was the little student who usually came late, yet today, he had arrived even earlier than she did, holding a warm corn cake and wearing a proud smile. "Teacher, today I wrote my name by myself." Just one simple sentence, and her heart tightened. She felt it, this version of herself, the girl who once lost everything, was now creating something meaningful, no matter how small. For the first time, she understood, her worth wasn't defined by who loved her, but by what she gave to the world. That night, she wrote a letter to her past self. She forgave. Forgave the weakness, forgave the desperate clinging to someone who had already let go. She no longer felt angry at him. No longer wished he would come back. Because if he hadn't left, she might never have taken this journey, the journey of finding herself again. She realized it wasn't love that made her fall apart, but it was also love that pushed her to transform. It wasn't him who made her strong. It was her broken heart that taught her how to rise on her own, without needing anyone to hold her up. That awakening didn't come in a burst of light. It came quietly, slowly, like sunlight slipping through the cracks after a long night. She understood then, pain doesn't have to be forgotten, it only needs to be accepted. From that moment on, she stopped searching for someone to heal her. Because she had already done it. With trembling yet determined hands. With a quiet belief that after every storm, there is always a dawn. And in that moment, for the first time, she felt grateful for having once been broken. After 3 months of living among the mountains and forests, she decided to return to the city. Not because she was completely healed, but because she was strong enough now to face the very things that once shattered her. The bus snaked through winding roads, carrying her back to the place where her heart had broken. But this time, she didn't return as someone defeated. She came back as a different version of herself, deeper, stronger, and more at peace. Her old apartment looked the same, the familiar cafe still opened each morning. But her heart had changed. When she stepped into the places that once made her gasp for air, the pain no longer held power over her. The memories were still there, but they no longer cut like glass. They were more like scars, still visible, but no longer aching. She reunited with friends. Tight hugs. Tender questions. Everyone noticed the difference, the calm in her eyes, the ease in her smile. They said she'd changed. Not the girl who once pretended to be okay, but a woman who had truly weathered the storm within her. One day, by chance, she saw him again. In a crowded street, their eyes met for a brief second. He looked startled. She was calm. No anger. No bitterness. Just a simple nod before she walked away. Light, as if nothing was left to carry. She returned to work. But not to bury herself in it like before. She reorganized her life, cleaned her space, cared for her body, called her mother more often. And she began to write again. Not about the love she had lost, but about the journey of a woman who saved herself from the edge. This city once marked her ending. Now, it became her beginning. Quiet, steady, and real. She came back. But this time, she came home to herself. Whole, enough, and free. Life didn't suddenly become perfect when she returned. There were still exhausting days, lonely nights. But she no longer feared them. Because now, she understood. Peace isn't the absence of storms, but the ability to stand steady within them. She kept her morning routine, waking early, brewing coffee, playing soft music, and writing. The words flowed raw, honest, emotional. Her own story, the scattered pieces of a shattered heart, and how she gathered them to rebuild a new version of herself, imperfect, but resilient. A friend encouraged her to share those writings online. At first, she hesitated. But then she thought, if her story could help someone else, someone who's crumbling, to feel a little less alone, then why not? To her surprise, her words resonated. Messages poured in from everywhere, from women who had loved the wrong person, been betrayed, or believed they'd never rise again. She read every message, replied to every one, and realized pain isn't something to be hidden. It can be a bridge connecting broken souls. Slowly, she began hosting small gatherings, published a book, and became a voice of healing. Not through cliches or empty inspiration, but through her own scars that had closed and healed. She still believed in love, but not the kind that leaves you crushed. She now believed in love that is gentle, grounded, built upon inner wholeness. And if that love never came, she knew she'd be just fine. Because she had learned to love herself fully. Her heart had once been shattered. But that heartbreak became the doorway. to a new life where she no longer lived to please anyone else, but to live truly, deeply, and onward. Now, whenever she looks back, she no longer resents the road she's walked. The heartbreak once dragged her to the depths, but it was from that very bottom that she learned how to rise. Little by little, step by step, on her own 2 feet. She is no longer the person she used to be. Not because she forgot, but because she understands now. Understands that loss is a part of life. And sometimes, what we need to lose is ourselves so we can finally find who we truly are. She no longer seeks someone to fill the emptiness. She has filled it herself. With growth, with gratitude, and with a quiet faith in what tomorrow might bring. To anyone carrying a crack in their heart, don't fear the breaking, because it's through those cracks that the light finds its way in. And you'll see, no one is truly strong until they've fallen once. But you will rise, and you will live on, more brilliantly than ever before.